Good evening and welcome to the Greater Rutland County Supervisory Union February 8th meeting. If you would all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business is the approval of the agenda.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mike, and I will just add that we do need an executive session for personnel and contracts. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. General public comment. We have no public with this, no public on the screen. I'll make my general public comment. Tonight is Lynette's last meeting with us. I think you should have to give us a farewell speech, Lynette.
Really? You want to go there?
Be careful what you ask for.
Exactly.
It's not going to be
Taking
the
notes for
same
Monday.
without you, Lynette.
It's gonna be really strange not, after all these years, not to be there, so.
How many years, Lynette? 30?
6.
36.
you.
Amazing.
Thank you. Is that all consistently or?
Yep.
So you could still be public comment.
I just may pop in just to laugh at y'all.
And then pop off when you're ready to pop
There you
off.
go. Yep. Sorry, time for supper.
All right, well,
Thank you.
we appreciate you,
for your service.
and we appreciate all of your help, even when you don't think we appreciate it.
You're gonna miss me. You're gonna miss me.
Oh, we are.
Yeah, we
But do know that if, especially this one, if you have any questions because of the histories or whatever, just let me know.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Approval of the minutes, December 14th. The motion would be in order to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Tina, discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Approval of warrants. Receive your warrants via GRCSU email. A motion would be in order to approve the warrants.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Lynette. Discussion?
I was just curious why we are using an Ice House limousine service for our student transport.
Bill, do you want to take that one?
Bill, did you hear that question?
I could answer it.
Yep, yes, I did. I got it. I'm sorry. I apologize. I was trying to get my camera on here. Yeah, that's McKinnon Venti. Oh, excuse me, that's actually a special ed child being transported, and it is 100% reimbursable, or 99% reimbursable.
Okay.
Is it the stretch
So
limo?
it's not
or-
actually, it's not actually,
No.
Transportation.
It's a,
But it's expensive.
either a Suburban or some type of SUV.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
it's hard to
any-
find transportation providers
Reliable.
these days.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Discussion? All those in favor of approval of the warrants?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Superintendent's report, Chris?
Thank you, Lisa. There are some items, obviously, for review. The bulk of this time is really spent in preparing for town meeting. We have, the booklets have all been finished. We actually have Lewis spent, I think, yesterday being a courier, getting them to, out to the towns and where they need to be. So thank you, Lewis, for, once again, for your courier services with that. We are working on the brochures. Those will be sent out shortly. The PEG TV presentations have been completed. I do believe the last one was sent over PEG TV today. They should begin airing the week of the 20th. But also each of the PEG TV presentations, if people are interested in seen it before and can be found on our websites, the GRCSU, as well as each of the local schools' websites on their budget, so you can start taking a look at that there. So we should be ready to go. Now our final preparation, just making sure that we're all set for our meetings just on our end. I know that Lewis and I always try to figure out how to make sure that we're at all the meetings. I know that there will be one issue because Rutland Town and Ira have the same evening, but we may have figured out a way where we can have Lewis be two places at once, but we're working on that. Because we do know that most of the questions will be,
Superman.
well, most of the questions do revolve around finance and some of the questions there. So therefore, Lewis is best equipped to answer these questions, particularly if there's a question around CLA or some of the details. So, but we are ready to go for that. We have completed our mid-year assessments. I know that I spoke with Lisa, Al, the building administrators, that I know Wells Springs did not have an opportunity to have the presentation this month just because with the snow days, we had to push back a few things. So Wells Springs will have their presentation during March. But the other boards, local boards, will have a map presentation at their February meetings. So Rutland Town and Quarry Valley will get some more information on the map assessments and where we're at, particularly around from winter to winter, and just take a look at that. And we will be discussing the impact of MTSS and ESD, and I know that we have discussed in March having a bigger discussion around MTSS, just at our board meetings, just on the impact and where we're at and where we need to be. But I know that I do want to thank our staff because it was a heavy lift this year, and I'm not going to deny that. I think our teachers took on a lot. Our building administrators took on a lot. We are grateful for this, but I think they're starting to see the benefits of MTSS, particularly around academic achievement and have an impact on student learning. So we are seeing a lot of positive stories around this. We just have to make sure that we continue to support our staff and our teachers with as we move forward with MTSS. And I know that this has been asked, is this something that's going to go away? No, this is not anything that's going to go away. As I said before, in other districts and other states, worked in other models where this has been around for 20-some years, and so this is sound practice. It's what's doing best for our students, providing, like I said, high-quality instruction in the classroom, and where we really making sure we're meeting the needs of all learners. And then for students who are still struggling, we have effective Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention supports in place. But like I said, this year we knew it would be heavy lifting because there's a lot of programming, and just learning new things this year. So, but we just wanted to, like I said, thank you to all of our staff, and we move forward. I think we said we are seeing a lot of positive success stories, which we can highlight as we look at MAP, and we can also talk about next month as we look at MTSS and the next steps are. Any question on that before I move?
I guess I would just be hesitant to have that map reported at Quarry Valley this month because we're having a short meeting before our annual
okay.
meeting. So it might be best just to move that to the March meeting.
Sure. We'll do maps
Yeah.
and MTSS in March. Okay. Sure.
Yeah, because I just don't know if we have anything else going on.
Right, because we were right before the
Yeah,
that makes sense.
we've
Okay.
only allocated, an hour, so,
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah.
Okay, thanks. A couple other things. Obviously, we look at the legislative updates. There are a lot of bills kind of starting to pop up as they appear, and they're kind of moving to committee level. I'm going to hold off on discussing bills that are just at committee level because really to garner discussion, they have to move out of committee. Once they moved out of committee and start moving to the Senate of the House, I think at that time. But there are some that we are keeping a close eye on, just in terms of the impacts it may have for the SU. And so at this time, or next GRCSU board meeting, we may have some more discussions around the impact of some of these bills that have been approved in the committee level and moved on from there. So the one that we did know was Act 42, and we have seen the impact of that. There are two major impacts for us. One, it allows school boards, committees to continue to host meetings without establishing a physical location. I know that all of our boards have a physical location. We'll continue with that. But I know that we look at our committees, we will continue to move virtually. I think it's a lot easier for a committee to meet virtually as establish a physical location for that. So if there ever is a need based upon interest to have a physical location, I think that committee will make that decision. But it does allow us to continue doing that at least for the next year or so. The other was around the article language around budgets. And I know that questions have been asked, well, why didn't we switch? What was the reason? Two reasons. Well, one, when we were working on the budget language, this had not been passed as of yet. This was passed January 25th, I do believe it, on the exact date, this afternoon, the 25th. We had already worked through this. I know I spent a lot of time with Chris Leopold, who also had worked on the state level around what this would look like. And Chris had advised us to continue with our current language for this year. And then, because for 23 and 24, this is not a requirement, does not become a requirement until 2025. But the board's going to have discussions about what that language would look like if we want to shift to this language. I mean, basically what it is, it takes away the per pupil expenditure and it just lists the total, the overall budget or the cost there. So that's the impact of Act 42 on us. So I know that some boards have been concerned about the numbers and the confusion it may cause, in a polling place or for a voter. I do think the way Vermont funds education is confusing in and of itself. It's a very complex, convoluted formula, and I think it is difficult because I know that Lewis and I have had many conversations with parents around if our spending's up or our taxes should be up. It's like, no, it's not that clean. So it just because our spending's up doesn't mean our taxes will be going up. And in fact, in many cases, our taxes will be going down. So it's a weird dynamic, but we try our best to explain what that is there. So, but like I said, as we get more legislative updates, I will keep us in the loop or keep you in the loop. School Board Recognition Month. I know there's a certificate that I've given to Lisa. So tomorrow, I think if you had your VSBA, tomorrow afternoon there will be a virtual recognition. They will actually be declaring February is School Board Recognition Month. We have a certificate, and for those who are not here in person, we will get those in the mail to you, or maybe our personal courier, Lewis, will deliver those singing telegram or something. But I do want to publicly state, I know that we always talk about there are certain positions that are thankless, and I do think school board member is a thankless profession. That a lot of times, like administration, people will come to you only when there's things that need to be changed or with complaints. A lot of times, people are knocking down your door to tell you how great of a job you're doing or how great things are. And sometimes that does happen. But I do want to thank you on behalf of the GRCSU staff and administration and the community members and students for all your hard work and dedication. It is greatly appreciated. I know that there are many people who believe that board members sometimes just showing up one night a month and for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, that's it. But I do want the public to know that there's a lot of work behind the scenes that our board members do in preparing for these meetings, discussions, just education where they're doing training, things along those lines. And a lot of it is just because they really care about their schools and the community and the students. So I just want to say thank you to our boards on behalf of myself and our staff and our community. So, and like I said, the certificates will be passed around, I guess a little bit later. So they do have to pass around, that's okay, right? It'll give us something to look forward to at the end of the meeting. So.
Keep us here till the end.
The last thing that's not on, it was in your packet, I just want to give an update. So there has been discussion around new board member orientation. I know that this year I have spent a lot of time, and Christy McGinnis has helped me out with this as well, but we have revamped a new board member packet. And so this year, all board members will receive this packet because if there's a lot of information in here. We wrestled with the idea of having a physical binder for everyone, and as we discussed this, we felt that it'd be very complex because, as you know, there's a lot of moving parts as new policies get updated. Something's changed, or a new budget draft comes through. So we are going to have an electronic version of this that all board members will have access to, And so then the links will be constantly be updated, so it'll be real time. So it'll have, and, like I said, at the March onboarding for our new board members, we'll present this with them, and then we'll also, our goal will be at the March board meetings to have this available for everyone to see and begin reviewing. But it will be, it'll be very complex. We'll have, or have a lot, I should say, not complex. Portrait of graduates, strategic plan with this finished, we have copies of budgets, past budgets, all the information that a board member would need. We are working on FAQs that they might need. So there's a lot there. But we also, feedback. So as you see this, if there's something that you would like to see included, that's the nice thing about it, doing the electronic, is we can add that as well. Because there are some items that I didn't think of. I know that the executive committee, when I met with them, I shared that with them. It was a pretty comprehensive list, but I'm not going to sit there and say I hit everything, but it might be a good idea that someone here may think about or think it's important, particularly for, Quarry Valley Board or Wells Springs Board. But like I said, that will be shared with you. But I just want to provide you an update, with that. So our goal is that when board members join, they really understand the seriousness, the importance of their work, as well as just helping them get off to a good start, really understanding the towns and the communities and the schools in which they're going to serve. So.
No, I think that's great. The expectations of reading your packet and showing up.
Will
Yes.
there be, I guess, an option if someone, like a new board member, isn't, I guess, computer savvy?
I think, so, and I'm going to say no. And I think I say this where I look at, from Christine McGinnis, she is, she's not a individual board member's secretary or assistant. And I think, what's happened with Christine, she does a fantastic job, but I think what's happening is she's starting to become she believes like an assistant to 20-some different board members, where people call and say, oh, I need a copy of this, can you do this for me, or can you, have this ready to go for today? And I think we have to get that a little bit under control. And I think as we're now in 2023, I think people need to have basic proficiency to handle a spreadsheet and click on a link and open that up. So I think if there's extreme circumstances or cases, but I think really we have to look at, it's going to be the easiest way for us to maintain this document, have it updated with current information, and I think out of consistency, everybody will have access to this. So I don't want to get into, well, one person wants a binder, the other person wants this, or because I think then it becomes a headache for Christine, to be honest. I think it's just part of being on board. It's just, there is that being, just a base level of tech proficiency, which really to open up and just click on a spreadsheet would not be too difficult for them, so. All right.
Yeah, that way everyone's seeing the same information. I think that's important.
It's easier to update if you need to quickly, but also if you don't have, if you don't have good internet where you normally would sit and concentrate on something, you will have to find a place at least so you can download what you need. That's the whole.
Yeah, everybody's town has a library though, and everybody's town has library.
We'll obviously work on certain scenarios, situations, but I think what we've seen this already where, we're, having people have to deliver a packet, drive a packet down to a board member or two, and it's like, that's not what we're
No,
here
we
for.
shouldn't be doing that.
No.
I
I
think
appreciate
people
it,
have
but
to, right.
no, I'm
No.
kidding.
Back in the day, they used to mail them, but then you'd get it, 2 weeks or whatever before, and then it was like, oh, here's this update, here's this,
Yeah.
so.
Right. And I think just out of saving, there would be a lot of paper, and I
Yeah.
think just from a cost-cutting measure, it's just.
There's probably even things in our packets, when she puts our packets together, we probably don't need the warrants printed out and things like that, that we could probably, even having that conversation with her, because we've all received warrants in our email, so you've either read through them or you haven't. So, maybe that's something we want to clean up too, so.
Sure. Yeah, that's something I think we can discuss, maybe at
Yeah.
our local boards and what they.
Because I get it, I mean, she's putting everything together, and we do rely on her for a
Right.
lot, so.
And I know, and there was one other item. We have discussed this before, and I think we'll be discussing this during March reorg, because our March dates have all been set. But we've talked about moving all of our meetings to like
1 week.
1 week. to better streamline the process. And also from an informational standpoint, that all boards are receiving the same information. I have discussed, sometimes it is concerning where, with Wells being so early in the month and Corey Valley being the end, that's, from an equity standpoint, sometimes, what information one board may receive is not the same as someone else, or it might be outdated by the time. And so it'd just be a lot easier to have everything in 1 week.
Yep.
And that way, then also if we look at around negotiations, or if there's someone else, we really have a one condensed week where we can move through and make a motion and get all of our boards. We did talk about having the GRCSU board. I think the one question that just has to consider is whether that board would like to meet before or after the local boards. And the only reason I ask before after is if we look at policy and policy discussion in terms of how that's going to work, what makes sense. But
I would think if we're, and Eric was talking about this before the meeting, if the goal is to switch how we had talked before about policy coming to the SU before, then it certainly makes sense that the SU board would meet prior to local boards. So like the SU board would meet the second week, and then regular boards would meet the third week, something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I think it's good that, any discussions that happen at the SU can be shared that same month at the
Yeah.
local levels if the SU meetings are first.
But if we met like a Wednesday or a Thursday the second week, and everybody's meeting the third week, everything should still be pretty relevant still.
okay. That's all I had. I know that we will have the discussion again probably at the March reorg, but I just wanted to.
So, but at the March reorg, we want to discuss what days work for our groups. So we really should probably pinpoint at least the week. So if the GRCSU is meeting the 2nd, then we can meet the 3rd, or the GRCSU could meet the 3rd and then we can meet the 4th. Right?
Yeah, the problem is, like, when you look at calendars, like, the 2nd and the 3rd are really the only times you have full weeks sometimes.
Right.
Right? So that way, I just presumed you didn't have to worry if you were the 1st or the 4th, you're gonna kind of get the short end perhaps. So, the 2nd and 3rd, if you look at that, those are those are full weeks most months. So, I mean,
I envision it as Rutland Town would meet the third Monday of every month. Corey Valley would meet the third Tuesday of every month. Wells Springs the third Wednesday of every month, and then Ira would meet on that the Thursday, the third Thursday of every month, because they meet alternate.
Okay.
So
I would
that's
say-
why I envision would just move along. those
I
lines.
would say, like, just bring that schedule to us at our March reorgs. I think that would be the most beneficial. That way the calendar's already set for, rather than discussing it at the March meeting.
Right, and having to wait.
So,
We do set our meeting dates during reorganization.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it,
well, I mean, but if the
Takes-
calendar's already, he's gonna bring it the way it works out, because it should also work out for Chris and Lisa and Louis, and then we can set our meeting around that. I mean, is Wednesday a problem for Middletown Wells? Would you rather meet a different day?
I mean, just my opinion, the Wednesdays work fine, but I don't know how other
Meredith
people
has a
feel.
motion.
Yeah.
But that was my point, is that, the board decides, when we meet, so shouldn't we be having these potential conversations at our reorganization
Yeah,
meetings?
but if we say it's the third week, and then Rutland Town says they want to be Monday, and Middletown says they want to be Monday, then we.
It's good to have like a direction, but it doesn't mean it's set in stone.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
if we're gonna have
that's why it's good to
if
talk
we're gonna
about
have
now.
4 meetings in a week, they're gonna have to be somewhat set in stone, even to go to your March reorg.
Right, but if 2 of the people can't meet on Mondays in the new group, then that doesn't work, is what I'm saying. So there has to be some potential that it might not work. But I think it would be helpful if we query everybody here tonight, because that's at least 3 out of the 5.
Sure.
So Mondays work for me, the third Mondays work for me. Does it work for you, Tim?
Yep.
So Rutland Town so far would work on a Monday.
Okay.
How about,
So Meredith had her hand up, so let's,
Oh, I was just saying pretty much that we shouldn't be doing this now. We can't do this till the new members have joined. It's kind of a waste of time.
Yeah, but we have to have some,
No, we never have before.
but we've
We
never,
can have guidance, that's fine, and we can hope to meet this idea, but I don't see the point of making a decision about it now.
We're not making a decision.
We're
We're not
not
making a
making a
decision, we're just
decision.
trying
We're
to see
trying
if
to,
it
like-
would work for us now, and then we could at least hope it works.
because we have talked extensively about having all the meetings in 1 week. So we're just saying, like, when you go to your reorg meeting, if you're going with the general idea of what that meeting date is, so everyone's not going with Tuesday at 6 o'clock. I don't know. Is Tuesday for you, Mike, Kristen?
Tuesday works, Thursday, Wednesday and Thursday don't, depending on which one it is, because I have other board meetings.
Okay. So at this point, we would say Monday for Rutland Town, Tuesday for Quarry Valley. So, we're not voting on it for
No.
This is just
tonight.
process, this is
Yeah.
process.
Yeah,
It's not policy, it's process.
Yeah.
It makes sense to talk it out, but my question is when we fill out the reorganization
Yeah.
template, we're gonna set a meeting date, so
Yeah,
what, just set our regular meeting date and then discuss the potential, coming down from.
no, I think we should look at that third week. If we say the second and third weeks are really the full week. So the second week, if we're gonna meet SU before, we would say Wednesday or Thursday for the SU, depending on what works best, for people or for Chris. And then look at the third week, when you set your meeting date, I think you should be setting your meeting date with the anticipation we're setting during the third week, and we're setting,
Okay.
one of those days through there.
That's
So-
what I'm getting at. I just wanna make sure. we're
Yeah,
on the
I don't
same
think we
page.
should, I mean, if you set the regular date, it kinda kills the whole idea.
Right, right.
Yeah. Amanda?
I was just wondering, in regards to the third week, if we look at our calendar, does it seem like most of our school vacations and such happen in the third week of the month? So maybe the third week is not the best week to be looking at?
Why do we have to worry about that?
Because principals won't want to come.
And
So
parents
Amanda, that's a very good point. I know when we set the dates in March, we've had to move local boards
Yeah.
anyways because of conflicts with holidays and things like, so, sure, that's something which we should consider, that's fine, so. But I know that in the past 3 years, we've had to move many meetings because of
Yeah.
it falls on a school holiday or a school break.
Yeah, I just didn't know.
Right.
The third
If
week
since
is,
most of them are the third week, if we should look at maybe the second or first week instead, and then there's less chance of having to move as many, I guess, was my thought.
So do we want to look at the second week then for regular board and the first week for,
SU.
yeah,
Yeah, because, I mean, April already it won't work, so, of this year. Because the
And
vacation
February,
break
too.
is, you know,
That makes sense to look at the,
we'll set it and then we
if
can't
it's
do it.
okay with Chris to have the SU on the first
It's
week.
the board's decision, like I said, I just was trying to find a way to,
yeah, I just want us all to be like looking at the same time, or the same time period when we start to reorg, so.
I think the second week is a good
Okay,
idea.
so let's do that, so.
we're doing the second week, I would prefer to have Rutland Town on Tuesday,
Okay.
letting you know. Because I work on second Mondays, and so it's really hard for me to get updates or work on agenda last minute things that happen. It's been really tough for me this year, and I don't want it to continue.
Okay, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So if Rutland Town looked at Tuesday, what about Middletown, Wells?
I don't know. I mean,
Wednesday would be
my-
fine too. for
My
Rutland Town.
thought is,
Check out.
and it's just my thought, because I don't know how everyone else
Yeah.
feels, but Wednesdays are fine.
Okay.
I'm just trying to picture the discussion in my head.
Yeah, I don't, it's just, if we all come back Tuesday at 6 o'clock, it's gonna be kind of a hassle.
We could do a carousel meeting then.
Yeah, yeah. We could, but those are,
Okay.
all right. Well, I guess we'll try for the second week and see,
Days can.
yeah.
Right.
So, well, actually, Middletown will meet first in March, right? So we could see what they pick,
Yeah.
and then Rutland Town meets, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So we can, I guess Corey Valley will be by,
Default.
what's left.
So these would kind of be, I guess, tentative dates until everyone has, until the.
No, I
You
think,
set the date.
yeah, you're setting your date. I mean, I think we're picking the second week of the month,
Okay.
and you're setting your date. So if you pick Wednesday at 6 o'clock, then Wednesday at 6 o'clock is off the table.
Right.
So,
So you get to go first.
yeah.
Ah,
So, and I
Alright.
guess we'll just have to go from there. I mean, it'll just be, it's drawing straws.
So the GRCSU will meet on the first week.
Yeah,
Right.
Of the
so
month.
Wednesday or Thursday, what's your preference there?
Should we decide at the SU meeting
Yeah, that's all right.
in March?
Okay. I mean, we've historically met Wednesdays, so, but, yeah, okay. It won't make any difference. We're just gonna meet the week before.
right.
On Wednesday, not Thursday, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I think that'll be a lot better, and it certainly gives us more options if we need to schedule meetings for negotiations, or Eric needs committee meetings, whatever. You have more, you have a bigger option of the month to pick from, so hopefully this will work out. All right. Assistant Superintendent's report, Lisa?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. You have my report. I actually I had some deliberation about this, but if any of you had studied my report and committed it to memory, which I know you all do, there had been this section at the top for a really long time that was COVID-19 response and recovery. And for the first time since this all started, I felt like that was not a big enough percentage of my life to be a category on my board report anymore, which was a really great feeling. So I reorganized a little, and I did get some questions, and I'm sorry if I confused people doing that, but really just tried to move some things around into business as usual buckets and categories of work that I do. So, but most of the content is the same, and the same things that you've seen. There are many fundamental shifts in my job responsibilities or anything. It's just trying to reorganize my report to reflect our new normal and our reality, which was great. So I think beyond the report, the two big picture things for my work. One is there's been a ton of work with grants, in particular the Consolidated Federal Program Grant. Between December and January, I submitted 4 separate reports to the Agency of Education regarding that grant. Some of them were significant and a big commitment of time. And I think that is common and a trend that we're seeing now currently across our region. With the superintendents and curriculum directors, the region that we compose in partnership, there is only one supervisory union that is not currently under monitoring or having to do some kind of report or information providing to the Agency of Education. So we can see that that's a big push happening at our state right now. I don't have any of the insider information about the ins and outs of that, but it's definitely not just us, it's everywhere, and we expect there'll be some follow-up steps with that. So just, when that comes through, we just all, get the information together we need to do and turn them in, but it's definitely happening. And the other big piece is the transition from SBAC to Cognia that we're going to roll out very quickly this spring. This, again, was Agency of Education decision to move away from the SBAC platform to a new platform, which they're calling it the Vermont Comprehensive Assessment Program, or VTCAP. And I went to a training this past Monday. Al and Greg are also going to trainings, and we are pulling together and compiling all the information that we gathered from that experience to try to get some training ready for our administrators. But we will be administering the new assessment starting in the middle of April. So that is a very quick turnaround. We do not yet have the training manuals. We do not yet have access to the system. We do not yet have several pieces and parts that will be necessary for fully training our staff and getting everything up to speed and running. So we will be devoting significant resources in the coming week to getting everybody up and comfortable and ready to roll. We just got even the first hint of what the test might look like and be composed of. There are some sample practice tests they've made available to us, but they don't score themselves and the teachers can't see the reports at this time. And we got a test blueprint that I would consider like a very high level blueprint. And when I say blueprint, I mean it outlines which Common Core and Next Generation Science standards are emphasized in the test and like what percentage of questions are around each grouping of standards. For SBAC, we had a very detailed blueprint that went, like right now it's at the band level for Cognia. We had the claim, target, standard, like minuscule level, very precise information about which standards are being assessed on that. We do not have access to that kind of information for this yet either. I don't know if that will be provided in the future or not, but the Cognia assessment we did find out is a setup to assess students on what they call depth of knowledge, and all of the questions are set to be a certain degree of difficulty, basically. And that depth of knowledge was the same framework that we used in all of our curriculum development documents. So we were very relieved and pleased to see that, because that will be a very smooth transition for all of our teachers. We won't have to do much editing at all to our curriculum documents, other than eventually we're supposed to be able to have access to a bank of interim assessments, so those short, quick, targeted assessment tools through this system like they had for SBAC, where if you were looking at fractions, you could have the students log on to the SBAC system and take an assessment in fractions that had the same question style and format as the SBAC would have, and then the teacher could access that data to look at how her class performed and see if there are things that needed to be addressed either for individual students or for their curriculum. So eventually we hope to have access to that same system. We're supposed to in Cognia, and so that'll just be a quick little 2-second edit per document to add it to the new tools, we hope. So there are some promising pieces with the system, but I'm sure that you will hear from the field about the challenges in such a quick implementation this year. We're aware of them, and we're going to work as hard as we can to make it as smooth and as simple for our teachers as possible this year, given the timeline that we have.
Do you know why there's such a short, why did they give you such a short timeline to do this stuff?
I don't know. I think they did an RFP. They put out a request for proposals on the state level for a new vendor, and that wasn't settled until the fall, October or November.
September.
Yeah. So, and then they had to do all the logistics of the contract and all the
Right.
pieces and a plan.
But then why make on the back end when that's the most important part to get it right in April of a academic year? Like,
Yeah. Well, our federal funding and the current federal law and our accountability plans, our state level accountability plans, require every state to administer a standardized assessment to their students. And that, so I don't think we had a choice. And I think trying to, they probably couldn't pay for both SBAC and a new system at the same time. It's very simplistic, right? But I'm guessing and speculating.
Yeah, no, I know.
But I'm betting that was the situation.
A couple more months and they could have this academic year would have been over and then we would have had a little more time for it. Just, yeah, I'm just not happy with the state or all around right now, so for other reasons, but
it certainly would be easier for us to have a longer rollout. In addition, it's we have to develop all of the trainings. So
That was my second question. It's
Right.
like, so you're getting training and now you have to do all of this to get,
yes,
it's brand new to you. Now you're expected to train a whole nother slew of people.
yes,
That is brand new for them.
with
That's
information
also
that
ridiculous.
we still don't have,
What you
and
need.
questions that are still being answered. So yes, it's going to be a big heavy lift, and we're going to do our best. Like Chris
Yeah.
says, this is not even a baseline year, right?
Yeah.
We're going to administer the assessment, and we'll learn a lot from that experience and from the information, and that will all help us to prepare for next year when we have actual time to get ready to do that.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question on curriculum. Is that part of the curriculum work that was done in the summer and in the fall?
Sorry, what about
On your
the
report,
curriculum?
where it says curriculum recently review completed drafts,
Oh.
prep for.
Yep, so our teacher PLCs are working on drafts all year long this year. They're finishing all of that work that was, so in the summer, we had as many people as we could get who did drafts of the unpacked documents. And then during the school year now, we've pulled together all the groups that were not available over the summer, so they've finished drafting their documents.
Okay.
And then all of our PLCs are now collectively reviewing the work that one or two of their colleagues did last summer, and they're revising and adding other thinking and expanding it and trying to improve and make sure that everybody's on board and happy with the products that are there. So they're coming in kind of constantly. It's a ongoing work with our goal that we're gonna have full sets by the spring for everybody ready to go. So whenever they come in or whenever somebody's like, okay, we're done, we're ready, then I try and make sure that they get reviewed and that there's sign off. We're also communicating with the PLCs about kind of next steps and for each group based on their particular content standards and what they need to do.
And the other question I had, the family engagement action plan, is that like an SU initiative for all schools, or?
So it's part of the Consolidated Federal Program grant. We have specific requirements under Title I for
Okay.
parent and family. You remember the policy, which we also need to put on the agenda for an upcoming policy meeting to look at again, because we're supposed to look at it on a cyclical basis. But yeah,
Yep.
implementing all of that for the Title I CFP grant.
Title I, yep, okay, all right.
I have a question for Chris I forgot to ask. When's the design team meeting next? March
I
date?
believe it's March 6th.
Ninth.
Six-
Well,
I
okay.
think.
Sixth is
Thursday
a
the
Let me
Monday,
just take,
which is
it
before
is
town.
March 9th, I apologize.
March 9th, okay, thanks.
I wouldn't have questioned you.
Thank you.
How is that design going?
It's going well. So we met last Thursday with the admin team to begin drafting goals, action steps, indicators. We are meeting tomorrow from noon to, for 3 hours. So we'll be meeting for the next 3 Thursdays with the group, so everything may be ready to go. So for that March meeting to share with the design team. So.
All right.
I just wanted to add one thing. So on the, I guess, my advice coming as a parent that just received that enormous packet of SBAC stuff that seemed like it was like months and months old, and the maps, which I struggle with a little bit, only because depending on the teacher, depending on the child, it's like wrapped and tied in a bow in whatever way it needs to be conveyed, right? So when you say that this initial rollout of Cognia, right, it won't even be a baseline. I think the messaging, there should be some sort of messaging to the parents that, like, hey, this is, because like we got maps today and I'm like, as a parent, I'm looking at it like, hey, what do we need to do or what don't we need to do? Or, it's kind of hard to, so when I understand your position on that, but I think there should be a way to kind of soften the blow to the parent and the child for that matter, since it's going to be new to them too. And it's probably going to be right about the same time as spring maps, right? route, maybe, so.
SBAC from last year is still embargoed, so it's very hard to tell when the state is going to release things.
Yeah.
And the timing, it's
But we just
been very
got the
different every
SBAC.
year.
Yeah, specs have
Yeah.
been opened up.
Yeah,
so.
but from a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
but the dates were from a
So-
while ago, right?
Yeah.
So, Tim, I think that's a very good point. I think it's something which we have to consider is the messaging, but, I know it has been a frustration around Cognitive. We've known about this for a while now, that we are making this switch. We've been waiting for information. And like I said, we really can't speak in terms of why the delay. We do understand there was a delay in the RFP, and like I said, through September and the rollout with this. And I know Lisa talked about, there's, from an accountability standpoint, there are certain requirements we have to meet from the federal level. And I know we talk about, baseline or a beta, and I think it's where, we will get this information. And I think that's one of our concerns that we go back to the state is, what does this look like on, say, a school report card? Knowing that you've rolled this out and, schools will be evaluated, will there be another asterisk next to this, just as they have been during pandemic? So I think, we're still trying to figure out what this Cognia really means to us, what it looks like, how it compares, because if we're going from SBAC to Cognia, are there parallels? Can they really be compared, or is it something which, like I said, we're starting fresh, we're starting new, we're still trying to get all this information out. And I know it's frustrating, because I think as a parent, when I see my daughter's report card coming home, it's like, I have no idea what this even says to me.
Right.
Are you doing all right? You're not doing okay? What, I mean, I don't know, and I get it where, and I think that's just where, we're looking from an admin perspective, is how we can communicate and how we can work through that. We also, and I know Lisa and I have talked about this, we do understand there's been a lot of assessments this year. A lot of it has because of the recovery plan, because we have FastBridge, we have MAP, we have Sabre, Sabre being the SEL, which is part of the recovery. We are looking to scale that back. We are not trying to move into a testing culture where we're trying to over-test our kids. We are looking at what's appropriate for our kids, and we're looking to scale that back. So, like I said, I worked with MAP for many, many years, and I trust it. I like it because, like I said, it shows that growth over the course of the year, and it offsets that single snapshot that an SBAC or Cognia may provide, but it really shows, true growth. But also provides teachers who understand, how to, what adjustments can be made, what tells about the curriculum. We'll talk about curriculum cycles, things along the lines, but the next step was how can a teacher convey that to their parent in terms of, okay, so what does this look like for my child? That's work we have to continue to do with, through our administrators and with our staff, is what conversations at conferences or just, through a letter home, what does this information mean? So is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Where strengths, weaknesses, but that's something which we have to work on, is because just sending numbers home can be very confusing to some parents, and we're aware of that, so.
I feel like the teachers have done a really nice job.
Right.
But just as a parent, you see like the test, and you either cheer it or you're fearful of it, whatever it is, so it just however much weight, and maybe that's depends on the parent too. So I don't have the silver bullet, but as when you just said that this will be initial, maybe putting out something, or giving the teachers some guideline on, this is new to everyone.
I've received, I think, 2 pieces of communication, one being from Lisa about Cognia, and then there was a short email that came out the other day about, so there's just not a lot right now for us to have. And so once we get more of the information, we'll look at communication. Because I think, I know I could see, we have a staff member online, and are like, well, what does this mean? Like, know more about this, because we don't have a lot to pass on to staff other than that it's coming. We what this looks like, we're still, but there's a lot that we have to, because like as Lisa right now has attended, then how does she, she's been train the trainer, how does she then train people and then move through? It's a pretty truncated time frame that we're working on. But like I said, we don't want kids getting stressed out as a result of this, but we also have, so there's that balance that we have to work through, so. Okay.
Cool.
All right, thank you both very much. Moving on to contract recommendations, professional staff. We have Patricia Swain, Wade Davis, and Greg Connor. Any questions about any of those?
I had a question about the addendum for mileage reimbursement. Is that close to what he usually gets? And
So
it's just
this is an adjustment, and I do believe this will actually be Greg believes a potential savings to the SU with this. Correct, Louis?
Correct.
Okay.
We looked at a 3-year average and adjusted it slightly, and 2 of those years happened to be COVID years, which had reduced travel, so this will be a savings.
It's also simpler. It's a little bit less paperwork.
Okay, support staff, Lauren Mattel, Amber Ruger, Joel Denton, Christina Perry. Any questions about those? Motion would be in order to approve the contract recommendations for professional staff and support staff as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Kristen, discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Resignations. We have Lindsay Bowles, Christina Calamari, and Lauren Mattel. A motion would be in order to accept the resignations as presented.
Make a motion.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Administrative salaries, I think we should probably discuss initially in executive session. And we do have, do I have the leave request in here?
I've got the letters, yeah.
Let's see. Oh, is that something we want to discuss? You want to discuss, Chris?
Just trying to find it.
Yeah, it's the last thing there, that's what I did.
Sorry. Just to make sure.
This one?
It's the one that says also known as Granville, yeah.
Yes. This would be one that I think we can maybe just quickly talk about in executive session.
Okay,
if
that's fine.
okay.
Yep,
All right.
all right. Moving on to finance, Lewis.
Good evening. So there was 2 items.
What is
in the-
that? Good evening.
It's the end of the day.
Finally gets to finance.
Energy it up.
Yeah.
There was 2 items in the packet. Both were for expense forecasts for the current year. The first one is the central office forecast for the central office budget. Currently, we're estimating that we are in a surplus of approximately $100,000. The main item that's going to be pending there is going to be, so very at the top of the report, is the miscellaneous revenue. Built into that $180,000 are indirects. That's indirect revenue that we pull from our federal grants. We have the ability to pull from any federal grant revenue that we can use towards administration, the finance, to help cover the cost of HR, payroll, accounts payable, stuff like that. This number has been higher the last few years due to the increase in federal grants that we're receiving. As of today, we still have not pulled any indirects from the ESSER 2. We have the ability to pull from that at any time since it crosses multiple years. Typically, we have to pull that in the same year that we're spending the funds, but because that grant does cross multiple years, we can decide when we want to pull those indirects out. From that grant, I believe we can pull approximately $160,000. And in ESSER 3, we haven't pulled anything from that grant yet, and we can pull from that grant, I think it's about $360,000. So I think later in the year, we'll look at this budget and see where we are after we have, we can also take the indirects from our IDB, title grants, and any of the other federal grants that we're receiving. So later in the year, we'll know exactly how much we have from those grants, and we can make a decision as to where we want to see the SU budget ending, and how much we want to pull from ESSER 2 or ESSER 3, and how much we want to push forward to the following year. So we'll discuss this again, I would say, May or June meeting. Any questions on that one before we move on to the next one? Okay. On the special ed forecast, this one, it's a lot bigger budget, so the forecasting is, there's a lot more variables that can change on a daily basis, weekly basis. Right now, we're looking like we're running a surplus of about $78,000, but we could have a new student move in, which with an outside placement that could definitely eat this up. So we will update this as we move later into the year, but things look good at this point. And one of the main reasons for the surplus is just the difficulty of finding staffing and turnover. And so when we have those vacancies, we do have some financial savings. I mean, not best for the schools, but it does result in a little bit of savings. This is just an estimate based on the current students that we know of and their placements, and estimating those tuition numbers and current staffing throughout the rest of the year. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions. On the third page, I was trying to figure out, on the expenditure report, there's nothing for the SU purchase subs, but on the expense forecast, there was in the top section under for direct instruction.
So we have $90,000 anticipated. Before that was showing up under professional services. So if you look 4 lines above that on that same page, we had a budget of $90,000. Anticipated is it's actually a credit of $1,100, and that was just due to some year-end adjustments. Because we changed the way we're running programs, it's no longer a professional service where we're paying Kelly Services. It's a purchase service because we're running the program in-house through the SU. Right now, the SU is incurring all the expense, and then at the end of the year, those costs will be assessed or billed back to the districts based on how they're using those. So for any subs that were in Rutland Town will bill that cost, and so on for each school. So it's just a shift in the lines, and currently we're still estimating at budget at this time.
So you're estimating that we're going to spend all of that?
At this time, yeah.
And then on the expenditure report, there's an encumbrance for almost $4,000 under that line for professional services, but it's not listed on here.
For the 320 line, that first line there?
Yes.
I'll have to look and see what that is. I mean, we're not using Kelly Services, so I'm not sure what would be, that might have been an appeal that was done at the beginning of the year and it's just sitting out there, but not being spent. But I can take a closer look at that.
And then I was also just curious, under a little further down under the psychological services, so the psych wages are anticipated, we're only doing about a third, but the group health insurance is anticipated, 3/4 of that amount. Why is there a variation in, why are we paying more on health insurance and less on wages?
So in general, it has to do with the way we budget. I'll look at the health insurance specifically, but so when we budget for special ed, we budget it as a gross number for all of our special ed related costs. So it includes no matter what funding source we're getting. So whether it's through the IDB grant, whether it's through special ed, or any other special ed related grant. Because we just put them all into one big bucket. When we look at actuals, anything that we put to the IDB grant or any other special ed grant would not be showing up on the actuals for the current year. And the offset would be that we would not be having that revenue. So if you look at the budget, you usually would see a grant revenue of $680,000 that's budgeted. That would be zero for anticipated.
That's
just
why
because
revenue's low.
we're just shifting it.
Okay.
And we do that just because at the time that we're creating the budget, which is 6 to 8 months before we start the school year, we don't know exactly what maybe we will put to the grant, and we may shift that. So that's why we're doing it as a gross level. We're estimating how much grant revenue we're going to have. And then when we actually do know what we're putting to the grant, it just adjusts the actuals and the forecast. As far as the actual health insurance, I'll look at that to make sure that it could have been that someone that didn't have a plan now does have a plan, and so the prorated basis of, because there's 3 people that fall into that category, and a portion of their salaries are each grant funded. So somebody that may not have had health insurance budgeted now does have health insurance, and so when we take 90% of that actual or that it's increasing the actuals above that same percentage. But I'll take a closer look at that.
And then above a little bit more, sorry, about the direct instruction, what is excess cost for public versus private? What is that line?
So we have a few different lines there, and I can give you a quick definition. So when you have a student that, say, attends Mill River, and we get billed a regular ed tuition for that student, and then if they're a special ed student and they're getting special ed services, we get billed additional cost, and those costs would be considered excess cost. And so you have 2 different excess cost lines. You have tuition, you have for public school, and then you have for private school, and that's just the difference whether they go to Mill River or Burn.
So there's tuition.
It's not tuition, it's
special ed.
special ed services.
Tuition, to a different school rather than us.
And the reason I'm being more specific about that is because there's also tuition lines.
Right.
And those are separate lines, and those would be for, like, if you have a student that's going to an all-inclusive special ed program. So, for example, if you have a student that's going to VAC or Lehigh, they don't bill us a regular ed tuition and then a special ed tuition. There's just one special ed tuition line, and that gets billed as tuition. The excess cost is usually for services above and beyond the regular ed tuition cost.
So in the general expenditure report, we're doing their tuition, and then in the special ed, we're doing their special ed portion, and that's in the excess cost.
Yep. So the regular ed piece would be at the local level, and then the excess cost would be on this budget.
Thank you. I think that's all I had for the forecast.
All right, any other questions for Louis? Do you have anything else, Louis?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay. So we'll move on to, in your packet, you have a job description for the communications marketing coordinator. Did you want to talk about that, Chris?
Just give you feedback. This is something which we, there, I can pass.
He could have one.
So this is something which we've adopted a similar job description from Slate Valley, who has this position. I had the central office team take a look at this, provide some feedback on, as we said before, this is a position that we have discussed. The title, we don't really know specifically what the title would be. It might just be communications coordinator. We take out the marketing piece, but this gives you an idea about what we're looking to do with this individual. This individual would be serving directly with all administrators, building administrators, schools, be handling the web, the websites. But I know that there's a lot there, and in the past couple months, we've seen a real need for someone to really assist with communications, and I know that is Louis or myself or someone else are working on like budgeting and pamphlets, and Louis is sitting there trying to drag pictures into a pamphlet or something else. Well, it's nice, but someone who could really develop a more more polished product
I think you do fine. Don't let him dish you.
It is challenging at times.
I'm not saying that, I'm not knocking those, but I think it's one where, there are specific needs. And as we look at discussions that we've had in all of our local boards around community engagement, how we communicate, particularly, budget concerns, or, just other items, that someone who really has the background, has the expertise, has the knowledge and know-how, really of developing a communications plan for our schools and for our SU and for our districts would be greatly appreciated. So I know my wife is she's a marketing director and talks all the time, and I just because I'm married to one doesn't mean I know what I'm doing, but she talks all the time about, well, what's the story? And what's the story you're trying to tell for your schools, your districts? And I think that's something where someone would really help us, whether it be through, through newsletters, through communication. We talked about the need of having an SU-wide quarterly newsletter that goes out to all community members, just keep updated on not just schools, but quarterly, like what's the SU, and this individual to assist us with that, and more of a presence, whether it be on PEG TV or, the website. So we just saw this as a positive. We do have a current position, but we'd like to expand that current position to really meet our needs, particularly as we move through, so.
So there is a lot.
There is a lot, right?
I guess I would hope, when budgets pass and we put out to hire this, that we really come up with like maybe the top 3 kind of objectives that we want this person to start with and kind of hit, because just reading through this, you could be
Oh, yeah.
drowned in your own office trying to do things.
Correct.
So,
Right.
yeah. And I was curious, like, in the Herald, you see all the SUs, they all have the ads in the paper. How did those ads come to be? Did we?
So Jim Sabatassa reached out to the superintendents who moved from to more of an editor position, and I reached out to the regional, myself, Bill Olson, Brooke Olson, Kristen Hubert, and Brian Hill, about each month we're on a rotating or on a quarterly basis. We get a full page ad for I do $75, so
Yeah.
at a real cheap rate. And so what we've done is our Shannon Moriarty is kind of overseeing this right now and working with our building administrators of developing this. And Jim made it very clear that the point of this page was to highlight things going on in schools, not about strategic plans or initiatives or bigger things. It really was more about kid focused and student focused. And so that's something which we would like to continue with. I think it's been nice, but I also think I'd like to see us capitalizing on that page to really kind of highlight the story. So I know we've talked with our building administrators to really try to single out one thing that's that's tough for them to one or two things, and I think it doesn't always translate as well as we believe. So we're working through that. So, but I think we've received a lot of positive comments on this. I know the last one was supposed to be color, but it was black and white. I'm not quite certain what happened there.
So that was going to be my comment.
Right. So
it seemed odd that everyone's have pretty vibrant colors.
Our first one was, I do believe it just was the proof that was sent was the black and white proof, and so.
Yeah.
But we'll make sure the color proof is sent the next time. So.
Yeah, I was just like, oh.
Of all the people, she's the color person. So, if you remember our strategic planning and everything. We need more color. We need more color.
Well, people are visual, so.
Yes.
Right, but that would be another, like I said, something like that would be liaison, be like a liaison between us and the local media and just
No, I think it's a great thing, and I've enjoyed reading them and looking at them. But yeah.
So I have a question under managing social media and stuff. Would that be potentially something that social media specific for different, districts or schools, or would it just be like one SU social media site?
Well, I think that's something we have to take a look at. I think there have been a lot of discussions around schools and the use of, like, they have a Facebook page, but a Facebook page should not be the sole delivery model of information. And so, and I think we really have to look at what our needs are. They could assist with that, but if a school has an Instagram page, it might be very difficult for this individual to handle every school social media account on top of all the other things that we need them to do. So we have to tend to prioritize what that may look like. So that's something which we have to iron out what that may.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, that was my first thought. I mean, for every school, I mean, that's a lot, but I mean,
There
in
is,
terms
right.
of like a district, each district or something like that.
No, I think we really look at. I think it makes more sense for us to look at it from an SU and from a district based and really work on a plan in terms of like what messaging do they want to work for Wellsprings or Corey Valley or Rutland Town and even for IRA, because I know but because IRA is not operational, but still they right around budget season there's always some concerns about what this looks like and so there is that need to work through there. So
it seems to me that kind of just circles back around to kind of your conversation about Christine. Like, we're going to have one working for the entire SU, so that it really should be, their message should be SU based. I mean, we have one website that incorporates everyone on the website. So, I mean, I think that's something we have to start being a little more cognizant of, that the SU, we have one SU, we have one superintendent, but every district, has to be that you don't just work for them.
right,
So-
but I think I think along the same line where we look at Lisa, Lewis, myself, while we are SU employees, we do deal with each district in
Right.
some capacity in some way. And I think this individual would be expected where there's an SU focus, but also looking at supporting local districts as well, just as we do.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I just wanted to point out on the top of the 4th page, I think it's supposed to be sitting and not citing.
Okay. Well,
It's just,
Tina, I was surprised that you.
She's done very well.
there are a couple comments, but I'm not.
Well, you
going to go
passed the
there.
test. Tina.
Feel free to scan and send. Always take it.
Okay. We'll get ready because we're going to move on to policy. So.
There you go.
Can't wait.
All right. So policy, we have.
If you find as you're perusing your package, you can always email us ahead of time, too. I think one of the things, and I appreciate that, but I do want to say that it's like when we look at Shauna and we point out spelling and punctuation errors, there are people who work on this who do feel sometimes they're publicly being made to look foolish as they miss a spelling error, and I think we just have to be careful of that as we. So if there's certain things where we can bring up and send an email to us, I just want to make that, because it has been brought to my attention by some individuals who do reporting as they discuss publicly the spelling error. I think there are certain things which we can share, personally without, publicly putting it out there. So,
Sure.
thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to move on to policy. In policy, we have 5 for second read, so those will require action. EA, Knoxland Administration for Opiate Overdose. F26, Students who are homeless. D1, Personnel Recruitment Selection Appointment. F2, Search and Seizure of Students and Property by School Personnel. And F21, Admission of Resident Students. A motion to approve those 5 policies for second read would be in order.
I have some
I'll make
comments.
that motion, it's Amanda.
All right. Discussion.
I have some discussion on D1, F2, and
Okay, so what do you want to start with?
I'll start with D1.
Okay, so E8 we're good with then.
And F26,
Okay.
unless anybody else wants.
So D1, Personnel Recruitment Selection Appointment and Background Checks. I guess I didn't read that part. All right.
So I was just curious, just to make it look neater formatting wise, on the first page where it starts the term criminal record number 1 and number 2, they're in a different font and a different size, just to make it all the same, at least on my record,
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
There's a couple
Okay.
different fonts going on.
And then on page 2, in the number 1 under selection, the 4th line from the bottom of the paragraph, it says the SU will have the cost of the such checks. I think the should be removed.
So number 1, 4th line.
Yeah.
Up from
So-
the bottom.
So either the or such should be
The
removed.
line where it starts.
The line number
issue.
1 under selection, the 4th line from the bottom of the paragraph,
Yeah.
the SU will have the cost of the such checks. So it should either be the cost of the checks or the cost of such checks. You shouldn't have both words there.
Okay.
And that was all.
Do you have that, Eric?
Yeah, I see that.
Okay.
And then if it's a second read, the footnote should be gone.
Okay. Is that all for that one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the next one?
F2,
What footnote?
Oh, the
Bottom.
footnote
footnotes on page 3.
for second reads. They're
Under
not supposed
4,
to be.
look at the end of line, of section 4 on page 2. I think that's what she's referring to.
On the last page, no, is what I was referring to on mine.
Where it
So-
says
VSBA
VSBA
version. All those are supposed to be removed. I think that they're just there for our benefit when we're discussing the policy, but they're supposed to be removed.
You're not referring to the legal references, are you?
I am.
Oh. No, we always leave legal
I was gonna
references.
say, I think they stay in.
Those aren't footnotes.
Those aren't footnotes?
No.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
Okay.
Cross-reference those.
All right.
Well, I believe I read that they were cross-reference only for us working on the policies, and that
They
there's,
should be there, so if anybody has a question, because God forbid you don't have them there and somebody says, where did it all come from?
Mhm.
It's easier to have it there. It doesn't
Not
hurt
disagreeing.
anything. Yeah.
but that's fine.
Okay.
I don't
the
really
next
care
one?
about that one. All right. So on this one,
Which one are we on?
we're on
F2?
F2.
Okay.
So,
Search and seizure of students and property by school personnel.
yes.
Okay.
So, in my opinion, when it's talking about the school property,
Where are we?
so it says searches of school property, and then there's a second heading that says searches and seizure of school property.
Yeah.
I feel like, just like against the students, it says search and seizure of student and student property, there should just be one heading for a school property. Because it doesn't make sense to separate them for school property and not separate them for student property.
Who has their hand up?
Amanda.
Sorry, Amanda, I took my glasses off, I can't see. Go
It's
ahead.
okay. I thought, I could be wrong, but I thought we had a conversation around those two headings because they refer to different things. Like one was specifically searching and the second was more specifically seizing.
Right.
So I thought that's why we had kept them separate. I'm not opposed to combining them, but I just felt like that was the conversation around keeping them separate because they were covering two different areas where the bottom one is searching and seizure of student, but it's a different process between student property and school property.
Right.
I could be wrong.
I think that they should be separated between school property and student property, but I think all school search and seizure should be combined and all student search and seizure should be combined. Or at least remove searches. I don't know. It does.
By law, you may have to, because police can do searches. Okay? But if you search and seize, it brings it to
It's
another
different?
level. That's
Okay.
all. I don't have any problem with it.
Or see student property in the top paragraph. We did have a conversation about this, but it's so long ago now.
Yeah. The other part of it is where it says, under searches of school property, it says on the third and fourth line, it says, an administrator and/or designee may search students and search or seize student property upon reasonable grounds. So why is that student and not school?
In addition, school.
Because that should be under the student, search of student and student property. It's just, it didn't make sense to me that, yeah.
Well,
Because that should be under the student property, I thought.
I think the idea behind that is, school property could be, desk lockers.
But that's later.
But I mean, those are actual school property. Student may be using them,
But the
may have
students,
stuff in them, but in them might be student property, which it puts it in a different category. Okay, you can search the school property, but in order to search the student or the student's property is separate, is a whole different,
so that should not be in that, under the school property part.
Maybe it should say searches on school property instead of.
no, of is correct. It's going to occur on school property regardless, but this belongs to the school, this belongs to the student. And they're two different types of searches and seizures.
So,
Yeah,
That's just like if you have a homeless person and you want to search their shopping cart, okay? You can't do it. That is their property. So that's like saying, this is your house, we have to have specific reasons for either one.
well, I guess my point is that it says, in addition, school administrator or designee may search students and search or seize student property upon reasonable grounds.
Right.
But it's under the heading of search of school property, and that whole line is almost exactly what it says under search and seizure of student property. So it should just be removed from the school property
No, you
part.
still have to have the same reasoning, whether it's school property or whether it's
But-
school and
Right.
student property.
yeah, I think it's just
But then it should say
a
school
little
property.
sloppiness of language.
It is a
Yeah.
little bit, but, yeah.
I just
So-
feel like it should be cleaned up a little
How
bit.
about,
Too.
huh?
I have an issue.
Oh,
with this,
Mike,
too.
okay.
On the third line where it says, may and be inspected by school employees at any time, I think we need to define in school employee because a janitor is an employee.
Oh, that's true.
So I think that's a little bit
You're
of.
right.
Where does it say that? I'm
On the
sorry.
third,
The school can do.
I don't see employees.
Under search and seizure of school property.
Oh.
it says
by-
employee, it's
by
Right.
by
school.
school employees. So that means everybody from the
Anybody could.
superintendent to
Yeah,
the,
yeah, that one
a
especially,
problem.
yeah. No, that is a big problem.
All right, so, this seems like it probably needs to go back and be just cleaned up a little bit. All right, so we'll take that
somebody's got
off.
a comment.
Amanda?
We worked on that.
I'm sorry, the third line there where it says school employee, I interpreted it as the purpose of the policy is to keep all school employees safe. So I didn't interpret it as any school employee to go seize something,
Say that.
but that it was covering the safety of all school employees. And then procedurally, it would follow who seizes the property.
Well, it says may be opened and inspected by
Right.
school employees at any time.
Right, which we can't do.
Mary?
Yeah, I guess I was just, with all these changes, it seems to be a lot of misunderstanding of what was intended, and maybe the whole policy needs to go back to the policy committee.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Mary. All right, so that one, F2 will go back to policy. Was that
Yes.
it?
We need a motion.
One more.
Okay, one more, we have one.
This one's an easy one.
Okay.
F21, admission of resident students. I believe that since we're trying to change all pronouns from his and or her to their,
Yep.
that should be done under residence criteria, the last line of the first paragraph.
And their, it should be in their parent or guardian. Okay, that's it? So that seems like a minor,
Yeah, it's just a typo. and
Yeah.
we-
Okay, so, so we're gonna send F2 back to policy. And for second reads to okay, we have E8, F26, D1, and F21.
And then F 21 and D1, there were just minor formatting and.
Yeah, he made the.
Right, so that doesn't change the context, so.
No.
Okay, so Amanda made a motion for, second reads. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. First reads, A1, role and adoption of school board policies. D11, public complaints about personnel. D4, volunteer and work study students. And HT, community use of school facilities. I think community use of school facilities was a discussion we were gonna have here, right?
Yep.
Rather than sending it back to committee, because it's gone back so many times. So at the next meeting, we'll discuss that policy actually here.
So we're pushing H2 later, is what you're saying?
H2 was on here. Eric had said that it's gone back and forth several times. We talked about it here at the last SU meeting, I think. We
Yeah.
had several conversations. So rather than sending it back to the policy committee to have them bat around, that it seemed maybe a better idea, since we're all representatives of different districts, to have that conversation here, because that seems to be a basis of some of the conversation of how we are looking at and viewing property and the use of it. So that it would be a better use of time here rather than, because we send it back to policy.
So are we talking about tonight?
No, we're going to talk.
Really?
Oh, do you want to talk about it tonight?
Yeah, that's
It's on
why
the
I
agenda.
suggested
Okay, we can talk about it
put it on the
tonight.
agenda. I mean,
Sure.
we, after our last, our last SU meeting, I think the recommendation or suggestion was that it come back to the SU board after committee. We talked about it a little bit at our last committee meeting, but we ran out of time. And so when I was looking at next week's agenda, I was just like, why bother? We might as well just work on it at the SU meeting, if that's okay. And, I think.
Yeah, so that's fine. Everybody has it in front of them. So,
I also wanted to make some mentions on a couple other policies that were above that. I just wanted to make that note.
Oh,
So we
of
can
the-
go back to those, that's fine.
okay.
We can
So
start with H2.
it seemed like the big contention for this policy at the last meeting was either taking the lawyer's advice or going out on a limb and doing what we wanted to do. So if I recall, Chris Leopold said we should say shall, which is in here. So the red that is in the policy is from the attorney.
Okay.
So discussion about the policy. And I think that's been the essence of the policy is requiring people, if they want to use buildings, to have insurance. That once the policy is in place, then Chris and principals will create a building use form. It will be at building principal's discretion whether there was a question about charging, that would be at their discretion if they were going to charge to use the facility or not. So, and as well as it also says in here about using audio-visual equipment, which for me, I would just take that whole paragraph out because I think that's just bad policy, that we spend a lot of money on audio-visual equipment. I think if people are coming and they're having an event that they need that, then they should probably be bringing that. But that's just my own feeling. So, who would like to discuss the policy?
think it was also sent back for, I guess, clarification on what adequate insurance coverage means.
Right, and so that would come
Yeah.
from the procedural part once the policy is adopted. That would be a part of the piece coming. So from Chris would come what insurance would look like and what the building use form.
There'd be an
would look
explanation,
like.
in talking with Chris Leopold, there'd be an explanation of what adequate insurance coverage
Yeah.
would look like in a reference to, I talked to him about a grid or this, that, and he advised that we stay away from a grid because policies and coverage does change on, and so while we may have something in there, 2 weeks later, 2 months later, it might change, and so therefore, just a reference to this, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Historically, I'll just say, like, on the municipal side, with our building use form, and even at our library, we have a form you fill out that you have to sign to be the responsible party, and there's a cover sheet on it that talks about what the fee is to use it based on if you're, we say nonprofit or profit, and doing it like in 2-hour blocks and things like that, how it's broken out. And then about that you have to show your certificate of insurance before your before the form is accepted and goes before like the town manager on the municipal side, library meeting, whatever. So like that, so that the application has to be complete, and to be complete, it has to show that. Amanda?
So Lisa, are you already requiring that everyone that uses your school has insurance? Is that a requirement for your school?
Yes. That's always been.
Do you find then, like, if there were a family that had a situation and they were doing a fundraiser to support a family, that has there ever been an issue around that family obtaining insurance? Like, I don't know, maybe a house fire and then they're looking to hold a fundraiser within your school, whether it be a spaghetti dinner or something. Is financially that a problem for those families, or is there something around that requiring that maybe they don't need insurance?
So I think there's a couple of things. So we just did a basket raffle at the elementary school for someone who had a house fire, and it was PTO sponsored. So those become school-sponsored events and fall under school insurance. And I think historically, that's the way things have been handled. There's something going on this week, maybe next week at Poultney, kind of the same thing, a pancake dinner or something like that. But it's being supported by a school event, so it falls under school insurance. There are different plans, we talked about this last time. Most homeowners, you can take out a policy on your homeowner's policy to rent. We've done it before in Proctor. If you want to rent the rink for a non-municipal event, you can. We require $1 million. Your homeowner's insurance provides that, and based on whatever the activity is, I think that's how they base the fee. VLCT, which is a municipal organization, also has what they call a tulip program. And you can do the same thing. I want to rent the rink in Proctor to have a birthday party. I fill out and it costs, I don't know if it costs $75, I'm gonna say at the max. And they provide a certificate of insurance, and it says that it's good from February 8th at 9 o'clock till, February 9th at midnight or whatever, based on whatever your programs are. So, yeah, that's the way we operated in our old SU for a very long time.
Yep.
So,
Okay, and do you guys have, or do you know of any other local schools that might have, like, groups that consistently hold meetings, whether it be like a lake group or a outdoor education group or some other group that consistently uses your building on a monthly basis for a meeting, or is that not really a thing in other places.
Denver Wells, because they don't have any central meeting place, so they
Yeah.
use the school a lot, or they use the Woodman Hall.
Yeah, like the lake is
Because,
Crafts
because they don't
Woods
have
and
a
that, like,
meeting.
Yeah, I would say
location.
here, no, that we do not have that, because we have libraries, we have other facilities where town offices, where meetings can be held.
Yeah, we don't have that in Colton either.
Okay, so
Town
my,
office is tiny.
my only concern around the policy, I guess, falls on, like meetings and like we were just talking about fundraisers and such, but if there's a way to have them school sponsored, then that's different. But in Wells, we are a small community and we don't have a lot of options, and our school is used for meeting places for people that support our school and pass our budget. And I just think to charge them insurance to continue something that they've done so long, I would like to maybe see different wording or something around allowing meeting use for a community function.
How do they get in and out of the building?
Swipe card
So-
system.
I think that's.
So
the thing,
community
like,
members
for-
that are not employees have swipe cards for your buildings?
Like if they had filled out a facility use form and they were going to be in the building on a certain day and time when staff weren't going to be there, then they would set up a swipe card and they're programmed to turn off at the end of a certain amount of, you can turn them on and off on the computer. So they would get a short-term access for a specific purpose, and then it would become, either if they didn't return it, it would be turned off.
So how many meetings happen down there?
I'm not as up on that as I used to be. Obviously, I would have to defer to
I
Carol.
mean, Middletown has a library.
Wells has a library, but it's, you could
It's
put it in his
tiny.
room.
Yeah, it's
So,
really,
that's the
really
problem, is
tiny.
They
It
don't
really
really
doesn't have
have
a big
a,
meeting space either, so the
they don't have a
school
space other
libraries
than
used to
Woodman
allow
Hall.
that stuff too.
Yeah,
Town
they,
hall's not even this
like,
big.
town hall also has no technology.
they don't
So
have-
like,
right.
you can't do a presentation or projectors or anything. They don't have any of that capability at town
And
hall.
that'll cover from, like Lakes End up to the bottom end of Castleton. You could get 30, 40 people at a meeting easily. It's a problem.
Yeah, there hasn't been a whole lot of use, since the pandemic.
Yeah, COVID.
Prior to the pandemic, there were, from what I understand, a lot of organizations would just come in, set up a meeting, whether it be annually or monthly. But
Maybe
and then
they're-
And I also think a
Middletown
lot of
Springs-
times-
Middletown Springs, they utilize their building a lot.
Maybe there's a way to differentiate between a meeting like for the lakes or something like that, where it's just people sitting there talking versus something where you're either demonstrating or selling or in that venue.
Chris?
So would the board like for me to go back and work with Chris Leopold on developing some language around high risk versus low risk?
Right.
No, I
Just
think
don't- I-
that's awful.
I mean, it's, well,
Chris,
you have to look at it though, because with Rutland Town, if it's school, anything student, school related, and I don't know about now, but it used to state that there was a percentage, say,
Has
a
to be
group
like
wanted
50% of your
from,
kids.
right,
Yeah.
okay. And then it depends on what it is, on whether they should have insurance, because you have to cover your town. So, of course, if it's school-related, it's covered under our insurance, students, whatever. But it's just a nightmare for me to think of what you people go through, because there could always be something that happens, and it's gonna fall on the insurance of the town, which is gonna, should it be substantial?
Well, don't these organizations have insurance?
Well, that's what
That's
we
what
were
I would
talking
know.
about. I don't think
Huh?
they do.
In some ways, I think,
And then Rutland Town
some
used
burden
to,
has to fall on, if I was a part of an association or a group, and my alternative was to pay a liability fee of some,
Right.
whatever, some number versus driving to Castleton once a month and paying a fee to rent a room off a restaurant or something, or, rent a space at Castleton University or something. I'd probably take the $250 a year amongst 30 people or something.
and split it.
I don't think, has that conversation even been had? And do they not
Plus, it
charge a fee?
depends on-
Do they not charge a school fee? You're using electricity.
That's what I mean, and janitors and everything else, so
Yeah.
it's pretty specific.
I mean, someone's setting up for a meeting. You're
Yep.
setting up a space for a meeting.
Yep.
So that's,
Cleaning up, breaking down.
yeah, I honestly am not interested personally in high risk, low risk. I think that I don't think that has a lot of value. I don't understand organizations that are meeting that are real organizations that aren't formed and don't have a charter and, insurance and all these kinds of things. So, someone has to be a responsible party
Right.
that's, signing up for that. And so what happens, and I also, I don't know, it's a little concerning also. So let's say they have a meeting in a school down there. Do they have access to the whole building?
No. No.
They usually just lock the classrooms, so everything's locked except the room they're in.
So particularly at Wells, there's a multi-purpose room. Everywhere else can be locked up.
I don't know. I just know like most activities that happen in our school, there's usually some kind of employee in the building to make sure the building's off, the lights are off,
Everybody's
and
out.
everybody's out of the building.
Yep.
I mean, that's the other concern. So I don't know.
I think most times, Lisa, I would say our janitor is there 9 times out of 10 because of timing around our janitor. And I would also say that I feel like people that are holding meetings at our school are grabbing chairs from the back corner and flipping a table from the right corner, or the table's already pulled out because it's the cafeteria. And so there's not really a lot of setup and takedown. I'm just concerned that, especially in Wells and Milltown right now, we're really focusing on community engagement and inviting people to be involved, but then we're gonna tell them they have to pay to be involved.
I'm not saying pay, and the fee, I think, is you put the fee on there so you have that option. I don't think that the fee has probably been charged. The only thing I know that we've charged fees for in our old SU were for AAU. Because those were like at one of our schools, it was Brandon that was using our building.
We charge for individuals running like a sports camp on our facilities.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like a for-profit use, we have
Yeah,
charged, yes.
yeah,
Right.
things like that.
We
But
don't
if-
have just common meetings.
Yeah,
For one thing, usually the school is so busy with the sports and everything else that there
Yeah.
isn't a time for them.
Yeah, there's not
We've had hula hoopers come in once a week and from time, and we didn't charge for that. And usually you have a board member come in and let them in and out of the building. It's been that kind of a very community building, staying in touch with families and families that have been in the school in the past. I really, what Amanda's saying,
More of an exception than.
it goes really against community building.
Could I make a suggestion that maybe we let Chris talk to Chris and let our Chris talk to the other Chris and say, look, we've kind of run up against the situation, and see what Chris might advise, how we might be able to handle it?
yeah.
Or structuring fees, insurance
Well, I'm not talking about the
requirements.
fees. I'm talking about.
Yeah, but I'm just saying should be maybe up to the administration.
I like the idea
Oh.
of, high risk, low risk, just in some of these specific situations, but mainly because, in this policy, there's required liability waiver and release form
Yeah.
there as well. And I think, some of the other stuff, could be part of the building use form, whether, set up and, if someone really wants to put on something, there's got to be that expectation of, well, we're not going to have someone come in and put out chairs and tables for you. I think that might be another part of it, but
But liability goes all the way from the room, all the way to your parking lot.
Right.
So we're sitting in a meeting tonight in Wells, and they go outside and someone slips and falls because, well, you say, but we
true.
know what kind of, we've seen things happen. So they're on school property. So, I mean,
And it does, I mean, they slip and fall, get hurt, it falls on on the school.
so.
But that's gonna be covered on our insurance, whether they have insurance or not.
Right, because they can be at the parking lot whether there's a function in the school or not.
But you have to give your legal team a defensible position, and that's
Right.
what Chris is for, saying, you know, easily, you know, I'm just using hypothetical, you could have, you know, a bike rodeo where everybody's wearing a helmet, absolutely nothing happens. And then you have another meeting where somebody goes out and slips and hits their head. You can't balance the two things.
Yeah.
But the liability, because now your lawyer, because you're the one that's hurt, is gonna go after whoever he or she can go after.
We're gonna
Until-
start at the biggest and go down.
That's right. So that's why I say, if we maybe let Chris Leopold say, you know, say, look, we're having meetings in a building. How do we approach this? You let him, he's the guy that's gonna defend it. So he needs to be, in my view, he should be the guy that has a contribution as to how we do this. So he can say, I can defend this, but I can't defend that.
Right.
So if we choose to do that, then we know that we may be in trouble. But if we choose to do what he can defend, then we can go from there.
I get that. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, you know, something that kind of fits both perspectives of community use of
I
facility.
mean, if
That's what I'm-
somebody, if
that's
they
what I'm
just
saying.
come in and
That's
they
what I'm
sit
saying.
down and they have a meeting, great. If there was like, well, I won't go
Product
into specific.
demonstrations or
but-
sales or.
Right, or a certain group wants to come in and use the facility for exercising or whatever. The chances of getting hurt on both are completely different.
And
So, I mean, we literally have turned down because of the activity. And if they have no liability insurance, then we can't allow it. And like you said, it's minimal cost to have this insurance.
Yeah. But the problem is, if we have a policy and one district says, we're gonna
Right.
do whatever,
That's what worries me the most.
then we're in a bad position, because now
Yep.
they've set us up that we don't have the opt-out.
Yep,
No, I think,
And actually, I would disagree. I don't think it does create bad community. I mean, I think community members see you as responsible for the facility. I mean, I've never, I haven't heard that from people, and
I would like to know, I don't know, some more, I guess, legal information behind this, because, you know, I know I mentioned, you know, like a liability release and waiver form, but like, who fills that out? Everyone who walks in the building, or, you know?
there has to be an
whoever's
organized
responsible?
group, whether
it's a group that's
right.
not associated with the school.
Right.
So if you're walking in the building Monday through Friday to do something, you should be there for school business, right? So you're covered under that. But if you're there for something, I don't know, if you let them have birthday parties there.
Right, that's the same thing.
Then that's not a school these are school buildings that school events should be happening in. And if they're not school events, then there should be separate liability. If you want to go rent a room someplace here in Rutland, you're gonna have to pay and fill out and show you have liability insurance and fill out a form. I mean, I guess,
Or sometimes that's covered in the cost of the rental, you not
Well,
necessarily,
yeah.
but it's
Right.
there,
yeah.
it's there.
But you're covering that, they're covering that somehow. You want to rent the room above Paramount to have a birthday party or a baby shower or whatever that is. I mean, it's just
If-
the responsible way to operate in today's world.
When you
so.
talk about maybe lake associations, there may be a situation where they may have coverage available under the municipal insurance, and that may solve the problem. The town of Wells says, yeah, this group is ours, we don't have a place to meet, we will cover you if there's a problem, because it's just a meeting, so that might be an alternative.
Amanda's had her head.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're gonna have town meeting at the high school, and the town is gonna send a letter of insurance over to the school to put on file for the 2 days that they're there. The town has filled out, or will have filled out, a building use form. And our kids went to the rink to go skating. We have a letter of insurance on file with the town, So our kids can go to municipal properties during the school and do those kinds of things, so. Amanda?
I'm just wondering, maybe a solution to this is when we go back to Chris Leopold, we present going back to may instead of shall and adding a second form that would be used only for community meetings and such events, and then the additional form that is used for all others, and in those cases, insurance would be required. So it would just be that change of that word and adding of a form that would then cover that may and still allow insurance for everybody else.
But that language came from Chris Leopold.
Right.
Yeah, I thought Chris said that we could use may, but it was safer to use shall.
Chris Leopold said if the board wished, there isn't, they could use may, but his recommendation would be to use shall, from a liability perspective. I know I have some serious concerns with, I think that a group should not be in the building by themselves at any time.
Right.
I think we should not be issuing keys, or regardless if it's restricted, because if an individual fails to close the door the whole way, something happens. I know we have, you have wildlife, you have teens, and
Cold.
so, and if they fail to leave that door open and say we have theft or we have property damage, and that group has not paid, we have insurance to cover that, but I think there are things we have to take a look at. I also have concern about school safety and security. We restrict access, and I know that, we think, hey, this could never happen, or that, we have good people not kept in our town, but you have to understand is, as you allow people access to the building on the weekends, you don't know what they're bringing in, what they're keeping in, keeping in there, whatnot, and we have had other situations in other areas where kids would bring in a weapon or stash a weapon over the weekend. We talk to athletic coaches to be aware of, what kids have access to. There are just concerns whenever you have, anything outside of school hours, whether it be, athletic events, sporting events. I said we invite community members in for sporting events, and we do, I've always had concerns about that in terms of, people have access. I understand the need of community use, but I think also the boards have to understand there is a liability aspect that just you need to consider. And if the board, if this board chooses to use may, and we look at high risk, low risk, you understand there's still a risk that as a board we are taking on. So
And that we're putting our community and taxpayers at a risk.
I just as soon go with shall, but I think
Absolutely.
perhaps asking Chris about the,
bring it in for further discussion.
right, the permit, yep.
I do think, we need to discuss fees.
Yep.
Because I think if we are asking community members to be in there, we have a custodian being there, that as we look at budgets,
Yep.
and we're asking custodians to, we're paying them overtime, I think it's only fair that family who wants to have a birthday party, I think it's great, but they can pay the $50, $60 that's going to cost for the custodian to be there, to open up, to lock up, to clean up. Because our goal is, we have a party there, and we think, it's great, kids come in on Monday morning and they come into a mess. It's not fair to the custodian to get in there early, and so I think there are a lot of things that we, discuss. Like I said, I understand that in each of our communities, it's more than just a school.
Right.
But we're not trying to restrict access. We're just trying to make sure we control access and we're being responsible.
Access.
Right.
And whatever that looks like, I'm fine, but at the end of the day, as a superintendent, I'm responsible for the safety and security of students and staff when they walk in there Monday morning, they walk out, and that's my responsibility, so.
Okay,
So
so it sounds like we have,
Is that the consensus that this go back to legal counsel, or?
Well, it sounds like legal counsel's already given us enough information. I feel like we just keep passing it back and
So
forth.
what it'd be, I would work with Chris, draft language to bring to the policy, and you could take a look at what that would look like around the
That's
high
good.
risk, low risk, so, and
I'd
then,
be happy to see that, but I just.
Sure.
I guess, I
Yeah.
have no interest in seeing that. I mean, I think that's just another charge
It's
for Chris,
an arguing point.
for Chris Leopold, right. But it's just like Mike said, you could have an event where they wore helmets and did this and
Yep.
had a rodeo, and then, the other event is something you know,
It basically boils down to, is this school-sponsored or non-school
the
sponsored?
100%, are you gonna?
And that's what it breaks down to, so.
That's it. There's two categories. That's it.
Well, what I was getting at was for as long as this policy's been passed back and forth, I mean, if not everyone's in agreement on having it go to legal counsel, we could just, someone could make a motion to, send it through as is for first reads instead of, so that's why I was asking.
Well, we don't make a
like,
motion on first read.
No.
No, to have it,
Oh,
it's not to adopt it, but,
Oh.
it would go, because we're reviewing it, it would need to,
oh,
go
so
as
you
first
want to
read.
post it next time like this as a first read?
March.
In March?
As a
That's what I
first
was
read?
thinking, but that's,
Right.
I don't know, that's why I asked who was in.
Yeah, we have to move it forward somehow, and that's fine, because it's still not second read and a done deal.
Yeah.
I mean, Tina's right, I mean, and Chris is right, I mean, Chris has already given his recommendation, so why kick the can down the road?
No, and the other pieces
thought,
are
but-
really gonna come after you adopt this. I mean,
Right.
the building use, the fees and all that should come out. I mean, it's like everything else. The procedural piece is coming after
Exactly.
we adopt the
The
policy.
policy. And I would say go ahead with first read on this
So
with the shall.
post this, okay.
Well,
As it reads.
You suggested to remove the audio-visual piece.
Well, I just think that,
I like having it in
We
there.
have to have it in there.
Yeah, I would leave it because we don't have a lot of options in
Right.
our town.
All right, so basically as
Post
this,
it.
It
the way-
says may allow,
Yeah,
they
they-
still
Oh, I
can say,
know.
no, you may
The
not.
building use form, you can
Right.
deny all
Oh,
sorts
I
of
know,
things, yeah,
I
so.
I say go ahead and
100%,
post
I
it
got
at,
invoice on those Promethean boards.
Yeah.
post it as is, as a,
okay.
Not
So,
using
post
them
it
anyway,
as
my
is,
Lynette
as a
makes a
first.
motion to post, B, or H2.
H2, yep.
As a first read at the March meeting.
Correct.
Any additional discussion? With the lawyer's language, right? You said
Well, that's
of
gonna
shall.
be, I say the way it is with
Okay.
shall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the procedural part comes after
Yeah,
anyway, so.
Okay. All those in favor?
She won't be here to
Aye.
worry about it anyway.
I,
Any opposed?
I'm probably really gonna miss this shit.
Are you opposed, Meredith?
Nope, I'm in favor.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously. All right.
Yeah.
Getting
Yeah,
closer,
Lynette
right?
doesn't
Getting
care.
closer.
She's just gonna
Don't say that.
put it on March.
I
Put it
will-
on March.
After,
Kick the bucket
after all these years,
I
it will be
know.
a hole, I'm
I'm
telling you.
kidding. Okay, any new business?
Wait,
Yeah, sorry.
I
Are
did
are
tell
they
you.
just, are they just grammar issues?
No,
Oh, okay.
sorry.
Can you tell us what number are they?
So D11,
Wait. Okay.
so I didn't have a problem with A1, so we can skip that.
Oh, yay, A1's okay.
Okay.
So D11, I was curious about people's opinion about when it says appeal to the board. I noticed that there was no time limit put in there.
Yeah.
Could there be, like, if the above steps do not resolve the concern of the complainant, they may request a session of the board within 15 days, within 30 days, or something like that, just to have like a.
In writing
And
within 15?
Within writing, so that it's not, 5 months later, by the way,
Yeah.
back in
It's current.
October, I wasn't very happy with this, and I just want to bring it up in April. I just feel like there should be something.
Well, we did talk about that, and the conversation was essentially around that, like, there really shouldn't be a time limit on complaints,
Right.
Some
basically.
things are ongoing and so, and evolving, and so sometimes someone might make a complaint and then they are like, okay, well, this is getting resolved, and then, and 3 months go by, and then something happens that brings it
Back
out
to the
again,
forefront,
and
yeah.
then it's like, well, is that a
But
new
then that's-
complaint, is that is it the same complaint, and so
What, they
So-
would probably.
we were afraid of being super specific
Yeah.
about a
Right.
timeline because there's so many different ways that people can complain or issues or so we didn't want to be super restrictive because or that was the conversation
Been
was
reasonable.
So I think it should be 30 days once the superintendent makes a decision, though. Like, once a superintendent makes a decision about something, there should be a window that that's when they can address it.
Well, I'm a little confused.
Mm-hmm.
So, who would be the immediate supervisor if it's not?
So it could be
The
a para,
principal.
it could be a para educator, and then I don't know who would be that. It could be assistant principal, I don't know. I don't think it matters, because eventually it will go to the principal, so the principal might be the immediate supervisor,
Okay, I just
Yeah.
think it
But-
seems
It
weird.
could be an issue with the principal, then that would go to.
the superintendent.
Right.
Yeah, I get that, but
But-
it just seems like there's two more layers before it gets to the principal,
So and I'll just say from a superintendent's perspective, and this has nothing to do with timeline, the one only concern I have is that when there's a complaint about personnel, there's very little that I can share with a community member, or parent, or guardian about
Right.
how the personnel issue has been resolved or handled. So
Right.
we may find that because Lisa and I deal with this regularly, where we say, thank you, this will be addressed, and then, well, I need to know, I'm like, well, we can't discuss personnel issues with you, this will be addressed, if this continues, please let us know. And they're upset because they want to understand or see or hear about what that aspect of that consequence will be, and we try to explain that we can't. And I think that as we move forward, there are certain, things that can't be discussed publicly, but the board has every right to discuss and ask, well, how is this resolved, or what are we looking at? But that's where, just from a public complaint, there may be certain situations where some family members may be frustrated because they're not hearing or they're not seeing.
So would you be interested in there being a line on there, it should be noted that, decisions made about personnel will not be shared by the complainant due to legal reasons or something like that?
I think we could look at language
Or something,
there, just like
just
a
to
note.
fortify that
that's-
so that it's a little bit more,
Right. All
My
personal
obvious.
related,
My only
decision.
question here is, it doesn't really say it. It said the complaint should be in writing. Does not say it must be. And I have an issue with that. As far as I'm concerned, it must be.
where is that?
It's in resolving complaints.
Yeah.
So I would agree with that, Lynette, just from, we get phone calls all the time, but then we ask,
So it must be in writing?
if it's in writing, then we
Should. Yeah.
understand, because somebody might say something, verbalize that, and then 2 days later, the complaint may change or may
Exactly.
evolve, and so just really, what is the nature of your complaints? But that's where even developing a form, around this, so there'd be.
I mean, I
procedure.
know some people, they just don't want to put it in writing, but to protect yourself, if you have something in writing from someone, then whoever's being accused of something, they know it's not just harassment from the school, it's not, you've got documentation that there really was a complaint. It's just like a lot, I know I use this analogy a lot, but police issues. Okay, you have to give me a statement. Okay, I want him charged, I want him put away, and then 2 days later, no, I love him, I'm not gonna make a complaint. So you've spent a lot of time for no reason. You need something in writing.
So I just think that we talk about them, whoever the complainant is, not knowing what the consequences from the superintendent, but it says they may request a session of the board for the purpose of reviewing the superintendent's decision.
It's also almost like a hearing, yes.
Well, but it's almost like, how would they know what the superintendent's decision is?
He's either gonna agree with the previous decision.
Well,
or-
they're gonna know, they shouldn't even know if there's a consequence, though.
Well, we could discuss that this
Right.
situation been addressed and resolved, we feel that's satisfactorily addressed, but and we've had some issues
Yeah.
in some of our districts where families feel that, because they don't know what's going on, well, this hasn't been addressed, this hasn't
Right.
been resolved.
Right.
And so it goes on and on,
But you can't.
but you can't
Right, but that's what
share
I'm just
with-
saying,
right.
that sentence almost gives the open-ended that if they appeal, they're gonna know what the decision was of the superintendent, because it says
Well, they will, it'll either,
They may
their
request a
question will either be,
session of the board for the purpose of reviewing
right,
the superintendent's decision. So, I mean, I guess you
So
can't just say that.
I know we discussed it, but that's something which we could work with Chris, well, I'm already working with Chris on some other things.
yeah.
Put it all in one, Chris, so we don't get one fee and not
Workshop
five.
with Chris's,
Yeah.
so I could just do it free of charge.
Let me increase our legal forecast.
But that might be cheaper than the consequences of
Yes.
not.
Right,
No, but I would reach out to him just around that, because I think it also depends on the nature of the complaint, too.
Sure.
You know, I think there are a variety, but I think there are some issues that we've dealt with in which a parent may be frustrated with a staff member, and they've gone to the administrator, and they feel that the administrator has done nothing about this, and then we discuss it, thank you, this has been handled, and say, well, nothing's been handled, because
yeah,
this
you're just
person's
a bunch
still in
of
school. It's
slackers,
like,
you
well,
don't,
Yeah,
you know, this has been addressed, and, you know, we can't necessarily discuss
okay.
what, you know, but there are other situations which can be discussed. And
Right.
so I think it just depends. So
I think it just,
there are a lot of nuances in
Yeah.
this that.
think it just continue, though, the
Right.
angst with parents if they
well,
think
it
that-
will.
Yeah.
There will be some you cannot please,
Yeah.
believe me.
Okay, so is
Um,
that the only thing on that policy?
The only thing was that like I said, instead of should be, it should be shall, or has.
Must.
Or
Must be, right.
Okay, all right.
And then, Tina, your suggestion on the appeal to the board was,
Well, I wanted to have a conversation about adding a time limit.
Like 30 days?
Yeah, 30 days from the superintendent's decision.
Right,
or-
you have within
or
30 days.
something like that, or 45 days. I mean, I'm not
Chris, there is
saying
no
what it
Written
is, but
appeal
should there
within 30
be?
days.
Yeah.
Right, right. Chris, I'm trying to think of the situation we had, didn't we have a time limit, even though we blew that apart? I'm trying
It
to
depends
think.
on what things fall under sometimes, whether
Right. I think you
there's
know,
a,
I think if it's a single isolated issue. I mean, I was at a meeting in which a parent brought up something from a year and a half ago,
Right.
or 2 years ago. And that was an isolated incident, but I think there are certain situations where someone may come back and say, look, you know, I talked to you 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, and this just happened again. And so it's like, so we have to revisit that initial, so I think that's something which, when I speak with Chris, I discuss with him if, around language around time limits and, appeal to the board. I understand, and I agree that there has to be a certain limitation,
Right.
that's, in terms of, because what's coming, but I also understand there are there's unique circumstances where we may have to, relax that time limit because of the nature of that complaint, so.
Right, and
I don't
it's,
wanna just be-
it's almost like it's a new event if it's happening again, right? So that kind of could start it all over, the
Correct.
process.
Right, and we can't keep spending the same thing over and over and over.
yeah,
and
but
over. We have to have an end.
But the time-
the
yeah.
timeline is, that you were asking for is to,
30 days from the superintendent's
Yeah,
decision.
yeah.
Right.
So it already got to him,
yeah.
and if it happens again, it would just quickly
Trigger a
go
new
back
event.
to him again. So that's a new decision.
Yeah,
So it would start 30
Right.
days again
Yeah.
from there.
And we have similar, like, you look at our grievance process that we have with our
Right.
association.
'Cause if
where
it's
there are
still
time limits at
happening,
each
yeah.
step
Yep.
around that, so.
Yeah.
okay.
But-
All right, what's the other
Okay.
policy?
So D4.
Oh, my God.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay.
So I know that we're really trying to work on this, and the reason we put visitor in is because we were trying to differentiate visitor versus volunteer.
Right,
I felt like there wasn't a lot of agreeance in the way visitor and volunteer were defined, and I don't think we should be putting you in our policies. I just think it looks sloppy. So my suggestion was to change "you were" to "an individual who is invited to the school for a meeting, open house, or give a lecture or presentation to a group of students, but who will not work directly with students." And then volunteer, I took out means, just to make it kind of similar to visitor. And then for supervised volunteer, I took out "you will," and I would say works directly with you could put an individual who works directly with students, always under the supervision of a GRCSU staff member instead of an. And then I also added after special event, or lesson, because I feel like that would be what somebody would be coming into for like a Four Winds lesson or something like that, because that's a common example. Under unsupervised volunteer, again, I would switch you will to an individual who works directly with students, but may not always be under the supervision of a GRCSU staff member. And then under work study student, I just took out means, so that it says a post-secondary student who receives compensation for work performed out of school. But when I started, and I also thought you should clean up the formatting, because supervised volunteer and unsupervised volunteer fall under volunteer, so they should be maybe indented a little bit. But when I got back down to implementation, I started getting a little bit concerned, because it doesn't mention anything about visitors, even though visitors are defined.
Yeah, that's because we added it, I bet.
Yeah. And then there wasn't really any difference in the way volunteers are screened for supervised versus unsupervised. So
That's procedural. That wouldn't go. So.
Right, but it wasn't even mentioned. So my point was, like, why even have it listed? Because it's not even mentioned later on. So just keep it as volunteers. Because then you still have.
But okay, I'm not policy, so I'll be quiet.
Well, we want your
So I
input.
think that's why. So
Yeah.
but I think it's where I understand what you're saying, but I think we need to delineate that there is a. I have the procedures. I know what they look like.
Right.
So that there is a process for a supervised, for an unsupervised. So therefore, we have to. I believe
But can
it's
you
important
put that, like, there is a process for, or they will be differentiated?
Sure.
That's what I'm saying, like,
Right, that's-
there should be a little bit of
Yeah.
something that says, the background checks will, or the screening process will be determined basis on the type of volunteer, or something like that, just to.
Right. You understand this because Rutland Town wanted to have this language that you're
No,
asking,
I
so
know the
that's why-
purpose of it.
She's fighting her own school.
I know the purpose of it, but.
That's why I'm trying to put the language.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like,
Against taking it out.
would Rutland Town want to develop the policy and then,
This is.
I don't know.
Right. I want it
I
to
think-
read well.
I think it's great because, no, this is fine. And, I'll say that from the, the policy committee, we looked at the definitions, and I thought that the definitions were, pretty well specific and what it covered. It made sense to me. But, I mean, if you have another idea on, I like the definition for visitors.
I don't, yeah.
So-
I'm not, it's not that I don't like it, I'm trying to make it gel better.
Well, I mean,
and I also.
anything we should keep, in my thought, visitors should stay in there, in one way or another.
And I think that's okay, but then I think maybe visitors should be added to the heading, so it says visitors, volunteers, and work study students, just so that it has that part in the title. I don't mind keeping it, I'm just trying to make it, come together a little bit better, yeah.
Makes
She wants
sense.
all
And then-
Legos in the right place.
Cohesiveness.
My other question is, when it says the screening process shall require a criminal background check.
Yep,
My question to you is, does that include fingerprinting?
that is a criminal background check.
As part of it.
So, to put the screening process shall require, there's nothing in that part that says if you are a supervised volunteer, that's not necessary.
Well,
And that was
goes
the
up-
whole point
up
of
above.
this, revisiting this
Well,
policy.
because it says the superintendent shall develop administrative rules and
And procedures, this isn't the
to ensure that
procedures.
volunteers and work study students are appropriately screened. They're
Right.
not designating or delineating volunteers, so in his procedures, it's going to delineate.
Then I think the screening process may require a criminal background check depending on the type of volunteer they are, and it shouldn't have the word shall, is my point.
Because not everybody.
Because
is
not
getting
every
a criminal
volunteer
background
needs
check.
that background check depending on the procedure that is developed by the superintendent. But if they're unsupervised, then they do, right? So that would be determined by the procedure. So I just feel like if we just change shall to may, it gives Chris the latitude to determine who needs it and who doesn't. So it
Well, I
gives
know
that
what it, what it's
flexibility.
going, what it
Well,
is
you could
going
just
on,
take the last,
what they're going on is the previous sentence.
But it says that,
That
yeah.
only volunteers and work students who have been screened and approved by the superintendent, never mind designee,
Mm-hmm.
may have extended unsupervised contact with student.
But it also uses the term screened
Screened.
for,
Or
to ensure
just
that
say
volunteers
that-
and work study students are
Then the
appropriately
bottom
screened.
line should say, any unsupervised contact shall
Volunteers.
require.
Something
No,
like that.
any unsupervised.
Something like that, it
Right.
should say. And I'm just, I want it to make it more flexible for the supervised volunteers not to always have to get the background check. They may, maybe the administration wants them to, and that's fine, but always having to makes it cumbersome for volunteers.
Or any
depending what
visitor,
their-
volunteer, work study students who have or have whatever rights to unsupervised
Well, one thing we talked
contact
about
shall
was,
have a criminal background.
the procedural component to this. And I think a lot of that, the screening process covers that procedural
Yeah.
part. And so to really get very specific in the policy, I guess.
Because the
it
building
affects the
administrator's gonna have-
The flexibility in
yeah.
the procedural part.
yeah, the building administrator is gonna have the procedural part, so they're going to be able to
Right.
tell if you're a supervised or unsupervised volunteer, and what they're going to apply, and what form you're gonna have to fill out.
It's just not clear that the screening process for volunteers, whether they're supervised or unsupervised, would require a criminal background check, the way it's written.
Yeah, but you don't know, like you said, they may want a supervised volunteer to have a criminal background
Right,
check
so
too.
so if it just says may instead of shall, it gives them that latitude, and it gives it that flexibility. And in our procedures, the procedures can say any person unsupervised will be required, but it also allows them to, if they're supervised, they may want them to too.
Well, I think what the screening process is saying requires a criminal background check, requires them to be fingerprinted. There are different things you can fill out for the screening process that's not necessarily a background check.
Well, that's what, right, but the way it's written, it says the screening process shall require a criminal background check.
So it implies, the last sentence implies, anyone who's getting screened, no matter what, it requires a criminal background check, but
All
that's
right,
not
so
what
do
we
people
need.
want it to say shall, say may?
It's fine with me.
Chris?
It's policy, it's the board's decision, so already the procedure is done, so whatever the board
You
decides.
can change
It's
it, you can
really-
change
it's
it to
really
may,
a
but,
mute point, because the procedure's gonna supersede.
exactly.
Right, but it.
Just change
but
it to
just-
may.
I think it used to say may.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
All
change
right.
it to may.
But
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean.
All right, so we've changed it. All right, is that the last one?
Yep.
Yeah, I just,
Okay.
yeah,
So we'll
I already
change
made
that
the
to
other.
may. Okay.
I think it's just getting in a lot of wordsmithing.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think it still reads fine and would still work perfectly fine, but.
Yeah, because the procedural part's gonna.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any new business?
No.
All right. A motion is required to move into, our next meeting is March 22nd for reorg, which will be here. Motion is required for executive session for personnel and contracts.
So moved.
Motion by Lynette. Any discussion? We'll move into executive session, let's say at 8:30. All right?